Hi, I'm Ben Goodfriend, and welcome to Bear With Me. I hope you enjoy episode 1 and my conversation with Andrew Forth.
All right. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. It's obviously a very chaotic period in all of our lives, and it seems like we at once have way more time to do everything and no time to do anything. So it's much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
So let's start at the beginning. You come to Landon in what grade?
Fourth grade. Fourth grade. Yeah. Almost made the 10-year club that started in fourth grade.
Just missed the cut. Okay. And
Yeah.
what's your initial impression? Had you seen the campus before, or are you driving down this absolutely utopian, ideal, white rock painted entryway for the first time thinking, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, it's actually funny. So the way I knew about Landon was that my mother was a secretary at a law firm in Bethesda. And one of the owners of that firm, her husband worked at Landon. And so through me just coming into the law firm and interning and helping out, she observed me and talked to my mom and asked like, hey, would your son want to check out this place called Landon? I had no idea what it was. And so my impression was strictly limited to me taking a test to see if I could get in and then, getting into Landon. When I first showed up, to your point, it's 70 plus acres of just like pristine grass and fields and rocks and things like that. So it was definitely impressive. The funny thing is that I told my mom when I first got there in fourth grade that I would only be there for 2 years because I did not like the idea of going to an all boys school and I wanted more variety and whatever else. And she just kind of laughed at me and said, okay.
That's funny. I've heard that story before as well. Young man goes to doctor's appointment is the one I heard from a friend in my class. And the doctor says, you're a really sharp young man. Have you ever heard of a school called Landon? Fast forward, we're graduating. This buddy of mine, class of 2016. But I do want to touch on something else. So you were interning in a law firm in the third grade?
Well, I mean, interning might be a generous term. I was there, one of the kids of the employees, just helping them, with files, stamping mail, things like that. So I think they're probably doing more for me than I was doing for them.
You're not drafting briefs, you're not writing opinions, but at the same time you are in a professional environment at a young age.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It was just one of those things that my mom having to go to work and raising me primarily as a single mom, I think it was one out of necessity. And then two, I liked being there and working and seeing the fruits of my labor. So I just stuck with it for quite a few summers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so you come to Landon and you see this cartoonishly prim, groomed campus. You witness a really broad spectrum of people, from the third, fourth grader lugging the backpack they can barely shoulder the books to the strapping senior who seems like he's 28 years old and ready for the NFL. What was that like? Can you just talk us through the sights and sounds of those first years at Landon?
And well, this is going to be a little hard. So I graduated about 20 years ago. So we're asking for me to reach back in my memory. And I would say the first memories that stick out, well, as it is today, still today, I'm assuming, the schools were divided, lower, middle, upper school. So for me, kind of the process of just kind of driving in and getting dropped off at the lower school, the other schools I knew of, but they weren't necessarily in my day-to-day experience. There's this other place called the upper school that you eventually get to, right? So me, my mind was kind of the lower school. And it honestly, when I think back, it just felt like a normal school. There were hallways, there were kids running around, snack time, teachers that you connected with. So nothing stood out to me that was drastically different outside of just the expansive nature of the campus and just what a day at Landon actually meant. I think was also another thing that was what was different for me.
Mm-hmm. And You're starting at Landon at a fairly young age. You're cognizant, you're aware of different things, but you're in the fourth grade. Did you feel as though you were entering a white space? And as a black man, as a black boy at the time, did you feel that? Was it sort of intuitive? Was it totally out of your awareness? Or did you really understand it at maybe a more sophisticated level than one would expect of a fourth grader?
Yeah, I would say two things. One is I was still a kid, right? I wasn't maybe, lack of a better term, that aware or fully aware. I was being a kid. I was in third grade. I was in fourth grade. I was playing with other kids. I didn't really see too much of maybe what I saw as I got older. My eyes opened a little bit more. So, and then I would say it was also a bit intuitive, meaning I felt like I had been in environments similar to Landon, maybe not exactly the same prior to coming to Landon. So, for example, in preschool, I went to a Montessori school, which was diverse as well. And the public school I went to, again, there was diversity there, and it wasn't predominantly one race or the other. And so when I came to Landon, it wasn't that drastic of a hit, even though the diversity of Landon was probably a little lower than the places I come from.
Right. Got it. And as you matriculated into middle school, high school, did that awareness change? Did your feeling with regard to Landon and race change? Can you just talk us through that experience and how it either changed or didn't change over time?
Yeah. You definitely become more aware, because I think it becomes more common for it to be part of your dialogue or your experience as you get older. Maybe that's because people think, the younger kids, there's no need to put this on them deliberately because they have other things to worry about, such as being a kid. But as you get older, be it classes, be it experiences that you have, as you're getting older, you're also outside of Landon, you're driving around and you're going places by yourself and with your friends. So you're kind of running into it. So it definitely brought it more in front of me and presented me with, experiences where race and the juxtaposition of, myself and Landon started becoming a little bit more apparent. Not negative, but just kind of more apparent.
And I think that's an important clarification, right? Because if we look at this in a sort of abstract way, one might imagine, I think I might imagine as someone who graduated from Landon in 2016, hey, 20 years ago, this might not have been as good of a place for a black student or a Jewish student. But it's important to remember that this isn't, a linear progression of Landon Banfield to, the open, beloved community. They're cycles. And just because something was 20 years prior doesn't mean that your experience was what one might expect or project onto the Landon of 20 years ago. So just very, very plainly, how was your experience? Were you embraced? Did you ever feel that you didn't fully access the Landon experience because of your identity?
Yeah, so the experience was great, and I will always, always, always value my Landon experience, no matter what. I think it set a very solid foundation for me, and which I'm sure we'll probably touch on a little bit later. Foundation for me, just in life, and to this day, some of my closest friends are the ones I met at Landon. Like, there's a group of guys that I talk to over Zoom every other Thursday night for probably 3 to 4 hours, just catching up, right? So, positive experience. I didn't necessarily feel I didn't fit in. Now, for me, I look at when I think about experience, I think no matter the race of somebody or ethnicity of somebody, you can have a good or bad experience in Landon. I just happen to have a good one. I can't tell you why. Maybe I struck the right chord with the right people, the first few days, or maybe it's because people respected me, or I was somewhat, not highly, but somewhat athletic. I'm not sure why, but at the end of the day, I had a positive experience, and we'll talk highly of Landon, and we'll appreciate the experience for a while.
Right. quick caveat to that. Somewhat athletic.
Yeah.
You're being humble. You're being humble. We talked about your track record. 2 years
Yeah.
as the captain.
Well, the thing I liked about Landon, especially starting in fourth grade, was I laughed, like, you had to do every sport until you got old enough where you picked the sports you wanted to do, right? So that was a great experience for me. And then to what you're referencing, as I moved up into middle school, upper school, continued, did football, did baseball, did a few different things, but ultimately landed at track and did track for probably 7 of the 9 years, if you can count doing any sport early on, but did track for 7 of 9 years, and ended up, I think the last year, I'm trying to recall again, being the captain of the team, and being the MVP of the team. I know that at least, but I'm not sure about the captain piece. But that's why I say somewhat athletic. When you go to a school that has, been ranked number 1 lacrosse, solid in football, I have to use the term somewhat athletic. So I had some peers that were very, very athletic.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's humbling. I mean, I was the captain of the wrestling team, and I had some good years and some records, but I never felt like I was the man, because everyone is athletic and everyone is doing big things. And the second I'm thinking I'm great because I won the ISC, I look over and Keith is going to play football at Oregon, and Griffin is winning the rookie of the year in the Patriot League, and it's good that way. It's tough to get too big of a head when you look around and you see everyone is doing it.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely keeps you humble. There are a lot of people that are talented there in a lot of different ways.
And now let's talk about your academics a little bit, because you really achieved at a high level at Landon. And I think based on our prior conversation, you felt as though it set you up for success at the collegiate level and in the professional world. Do you remember any specific courses, any specific lessons, any specific teachers that really made your experience?
Yeah, I would say the overarching lesson is just the work ethic that Landon instilled in me. You referenced this when we kicked off the interview, the third grader lugging that book bag around. Those are some of my memories from Landon. I lived in Gaithersburg, went to school at Landon Bethesda, so it's about a 30-minute or so commute. And I just remember getting home, putting the book bag on my shoulders, and just going in to the house, getting some food, going to my room, and just knocking out work. And so because of, the time it took to travel to school, because of the length of the day for both academic and sports, you find yourself with not too much time to do some pretty difficult academic exercises and homework and preparing for tests. So you had to have a work ethic if you wanted to succeed. So I'd say that's the overarching thing. I'll touch on one class, which I'm sure a lot of people touch on, that was an experience for me, and that was humanities. Before Landon, didn't even know what the course was, what it entailed. But, I remember one paper we had to do where we had to somehow connect, a musical piece to like a piece of artwork and kind of talk about the two and how they connected. I mean, that just forced you to think in a way, if you're not really a right brain person, actually think in a way that I had never experienced at that point. So I would say that's one example. There are a lot of courses that stretch my thinking like that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I have so much gratitude for the humanities coursework. It informed what I ended up pursuing as a major in college. And I remember that exact assignment, across 20 years. I remember looking at a piece of classical music and hearing this metronomic pattern in the beginning and learning that this was a sonic representation of deism, and the idea that God would just set in place existence like a clock, and that this was expressed musically. And when I was able to see that clearly, thanks to Mr. Drwinski and Mr. Doherty, it blew my mind and it opened up my world. It's amazing that this was consistent across our Landon experiences. Your class of 2001, I was class of 2016, yet the humanities were such an important piece of both of our academic journeys at Landon. And I've heard that potentially the course may have gotten watered down a little bit or changed. So for those at Landon who have the power to affect curriculum, should you hear this, please, the humanities are important. It's not too hard. It's good that it's hard. So do with that what you will. And life after Landon, right? Like the beauty and the singularity of Landon is it's an island unto itself. It can have harmonies that you would not find in the rest of society. But then when you leave Landon, on the flip side, especially after 9 or 10 years, the first and most obvious lesson is just how different collegiate, professional, and social life can be without this familiar structure of faces at Landon. So what did you miss? Where did you go? Academically, professionally, geographically?
Yeah. So entering the world post Landon, I would say I'm going to answer this slightly differently first, but then I'll get directly to your question. The thing outside of, I use the work ethic, but the other thing that I felt Landon did to prepare me to enter college and then life after college was it put in front of me so many just areas of just adversity that kind of built my character, right? Like it put things in front of me for me to deal with while I was there over the course of the 9 years that shaped my character, my work ethic, my confidence, all those different things. And so I say that, and we can go down that a little bit more if we need to. I say that to your question because when I entered college, outside of the visible differences, like a co-ed college versus an all-boys school and things like that, nothing really shook me that much because I felt like Landon prepared me for it. So was there a class that I was like, oh my gosh, this is too much? Or if it was too much, did I know how to handle it? Yeah. So nothing really shook me, and I think Landon, for all the experiences, provided that foundation for me to confidently kind of take on the next parts of my personal and professional career.
Right. I agree 100%. And adversity in different mediums, right? So you're in math class and your teacher's in your face because your linear algebra sucks. That's a different kind of adversity than going out on the football field and getting hit in the mouth and deciding whether you're going to check yourself out or finish the practice. Both are very important for life. So I absolutely agree with that. And I cherish the sort of, I think of it as manufactured adversity, because I had a relatively easy life. I had a, fine childhood, but what sharpened my character, as you're alluding to, is the sort of manufactured adversity at Landon. Practices were hard sometimes. If I was cutting weight for wrestling and I had to take a test, it was hard, So having something that I had to work for and having something that wasn't easy was a great part about Landon. And I don't want to sound too chest thumping or too like, this is war, because it's not that either, but it's just about learning the importance of putting your head down and just going to work and not complaining.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I'll add to a couple of the examples you gave. So there's the just failing, learning to fail, figuring out how to bounce back from it. To what you said earlier, you're in a school of very talented individuals, be it from an academic or athletic standpoint. You're not always going to be the best or be on top. So you need to learn how to fail and how to bounce back from it. There's the kind of adversity of just like daunting tasks. We talk about the different workload and like how I'm going to get all this stuff done. So like, how do you actually approach that? And then, from someone who lived in Gaithersburg, I did not live in the Potomac or surrounding Bethesda area. You're also, what's put in front of you is the socioeconomic differences of individuals at Landon. So how do you handle the situation when you go to a multi-million-dollar house in Potomac versus your apartment? And that builds character because you don't long for that Potomac house necessarily. You understand kind of what's important. You're happy with what you have. So it's just like all those different experiences Um, and I'll put aside Woodlands and all the different camping stuff because that was an adversity experience
Oh yeah.
all in of itself.
Yeah.
But
Cholera.
anyway, yeah, a lot of different stuff out there that you just have to face head on as a young man, as you develop into a man that just prepares you.
And there's really something to be said for that element of class. I mean, Landon has a very broad range of socioeconomic status. Students there on scholarship who are middle class, working class, parents might be working two jobs to make sure that their kid can go to Landon, all the way through the top 1/10 of 1%. I mean, you're in the fourth grade and you're going over to Johnny's house and someone's there asking, if you guys want finger sandwiches. So it's a broad spectrum. And I talked to my buddy AJ about this. AJ grew up in Kensington and came to Landon, I think in sixth grade. And he told me, he was like, dude, the first day there, I saw somebody get out of a Bugatti and they were a little fourth grader with a backpack. And I was like, where am I? It can be really jarring. And when you're young, I don't think you fully process it. When you're in high school, I think you might either celebrate or resent it. And then when you're in middle school, it can just be really intimidating. It can be really, really intimidating if you don't come for that. If you're not, already at the country club on the weekends, and then you get to Landon and you see this really sometimes ostentatious and jarring level of wealth,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And again, just facing that. Imagine facing that in a quote-unquote controlled environment like Landon, where you can face it, you have teachers that are supportive, you can go home and kind of have a conversation, versus facing it on your own for the first time at college or when you've got your first job in some random city. So I think just those experiences in that environment, to your point, manufacture adversity, I think just helps build a character. At least for me, it built who I am.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've got to shout out a few teachers there, because I saw in my time at Landon, Trey Johnson, Mr. Coates, black teachers who went out of their way to find the kid who might be in that situation where they're second guessing whether they really belong, and reiterating to that kid, you are just as good, you are just as smart, you are just as tough, you belong here. And at the end of the day, who cares what kind of checks daddy can write? Did you pass the test? Did you score the touchdown? That's meritocracy. So I think there is something beautiful in the fact that we can come from such disparate backgrounds, socioeconomically, geographically, in the DMV region, come to this place for a singular mission. There's something pure in that.
Yeah, for sure.
You graduate Landon. Where do you go to school?
So I went to school at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia for 4 years, naturally, and then post that worked for 5 years in partly New York, partly in DC. So yeah, I went to UPenn. The funny thing, which I have admitted a few times, is when I was applying for college, I didn't realize UPenn was an Ivy League school. I was just like, all right, let's apply to this place called University of Pennsylvania. And one of the distinct experiences I remember is just all the work that the college admissions office put into setting us up for success. Like, I will never forget, that packet we had to fill out. I went to them with a blank slate saying, I don't know what schools I'm applying to. And they helped me walk through the process of applying to the 7 schools I applied to. And they set me up for success because I got into all of them and had my pick of schools. And again, didn't even know half the schools I was applying to. So it was great.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I think Landon really does live up to that claim of college preparatory institution. We're going to get you ready, and then we're going to help get you in there. I had another college counselor, but that's because my mom, whom I love and I'm so grateful to, is slightly neurotic, and felt like, I had to you got to get another college counselor. But Landon's college counseling was superb. It was really sufficient. There was no need for anything else. And I felt really prepared. I went to
Okay.
Washington University in St. Louis, which is a tough school. It's not as tough as University of Pennsylvania, but it's a good school. And immediately I felt prepared. I felt that my writing was ready. I felt that, Landon had trained me how to engage in a scholarly discussion in the classroom. Starting in eighth grade, we were doing discussion-based coursework, and that was totally different from what a lot of my classmates had experienced in high school. I got to college, and a lot of friends were brilliant, had these great test scores, were really excellent in math and science. But the liberal arts, I think, is where Landon sets itself apart because it's difficult to teach foreign language, and it's difficult to teach writing, critical thinking, and that's really something I think we do well.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I echo all of that. When I entered campus, I felt prepared. I mean, it was difficult, and funny enough, I was deciding between UPenn and WashU. So I think it all comes back to WashU. Yeah.
No way. That's too funny. Yeah, I think UPenn has probably got a little edge there, but two great schools. So I want to talk a little bit about advice. You found great success not only professionally but also in life. You're pursuing true passions. You're living with meaning and purpose, loving and cherishing those around you, and you have a young one at home.
Yeah,
Is that right?
he's almost 2.5, and let me tell you, during a pandemic, having a kid at home while you're working is a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah. No, you thought it was bad when you got home late and you had to do your math homework.
Yeah.
This is a whole new level. So here's what I want to do. What advice would you give to a third grader coming into Landon, a senior graduating from Landon, a black student at Landon, and then a young professional who's coming out of Landon?
All right. To the third grader. Man, that's tough. I want to say to just focus on being a kid. I mean, I'm not sure what other advice there is. Like, you're in third grade. Enjoy learning. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy your teacher, and just have fun and be a kid. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be scary when you don't get the grade you want, but it's fine. Just
Yeah.
have fun. Just be young. Run around. Tackle your
Yeah.
friends. Stay in your khakis.
And to add to that, I mean, and trust the process, especially if you're going to be a lander for a long time. To your point, if you're not getting the grades or if you're not performing the way that you want to, again, I'm trying to think about like a third grader. Like, what's a third grader concerned about? In my mind, it's like,
Yeah.
are you really that concerned?
Yeah.
But if they are, trust the process, trust the support system, and you will get there. Not a problem.
Right. Fast forward 10 years. I'm a senior. I'm graduating Landon. What do you got for me? Maybe I'm going to University of Pennsylvania next year.
For the senior, I would say don't be as worried as you probably are, because Landon prepared you in ways that you will realize over the course of your college career and your professional career.
What advice are you giving professionally to someone coming out of Landon, or frankly to anyone who wants to be where you are?
I would say professional advice. One is stay true to who you are at your core. And by that, I mean, in a professional world, you're going to be put into different situations. You might be asked to sell something that you don't believe you should be selling, or you might be asked to do something that might just not necessarily be unethical, but be counter to who you are. So I would say stay true to who you are in the face of all the experiences and situations. And make sure, personally, I would say, do things that bring you joy and don't just chase the paycheck, if I can say that.
No, that's important. That's really important.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're waking up and you're going to this job day after day, and if you don't have some level of fulfillment or happiness or bare minimum, it does not interfere with some of those personal priorities, be it family, health, or otherwise. It's it's at the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're only doing what you want or things that make you happy 2 out of the 7 days in a week, and you extrapolate that across a lifetime, it's not a winning strategy. It's regardless of the paycheck. So I think that's important that we hear that from people, not like me. I just graduated. I'm just entering the workforce, but you are successful. You are at this amazing consulting firm, and hearing that from you, hey, don't just do something for the money. Do what you love. It's trite, it's cliche, but there's a reason why it gets repeated often. It's because it's true.
For the for the black current or future student at Landon, my advice is to run toward the adversity and to address it either personally or more broadly head on. Because for me personally, that is what's made me who I am. That is what has prepared me to, face when I was in college and then professionally, and not be intimidated by that situation, but instead to grow from it. So don't shy away from it. Hit it head on. Talk about it. Be vocal about it. Express it, because it's only going to make you stronger.
The final point: you've just become a father. Not just, but a couple years ago. This is a two-parter. Part one: what advice would you give to a young father? And then part two: how has having your own son maybe made you reassess your time at Landon, thinking back to fourth grade? You were only a few years older than your son is now. Has it changed anything for you?
Yeah, so advice to a father, I would say be prepared, because it is the hardest job you will ever face. From legitimate sleep deprivation that you will face and needing to function like a normal human being after getting 3 hours of sleep for like 4 months straight. It is a different job. So approach it with the excitement and the rigor that you approach anything else. But it is a hard job, but worth it as you see your son or your daughter grow. As I think about Landon in the context of being a father and my son, the first thing that comes to mind, as you just asked that question again, unscripted, what comes to mind first is the importance of just letting people be who they are and meeting them where they are. Like, if you look at kids develop at different rates. Kids have their quirks. Kids can be weird, like funny and weird. And don't try to fit them into a box. Don't try to correct them so that they hit a certain milestone. Support them, love them, let them be who they are. And the reason why that's the thing that pops up as I think about Landon is, again, a diverse group of students, and on some fronts more than others. But instead of trying to squeeze everybody into a box or kids pressuring other kids to fit a certain mold, just let people be who they are, celebrate who they are, and just meet them where they are.
Wow, that's excellent advice. I'm gonna take that to heart as a future father. Hopefully, you can't change your kid. They are who they are, essentially, and don't project your desire onto them. Let them be. Nurture them. Love them as they are.
Exactly. And that is not just to kids, that's just person-to-person relationship. You can apply it anywhere.
Wow. Well, hey, if you want a 23-year-old son, I mean, one thing I've been thinking about is, you mentioned like you talk to your buddies on Zoom every other week. Feel free to like shout people out, because I want people to feel like they have ownership in this series. I want them to see their classmates in it. I want them to hear their names in it, stories that relate to them. So like, shout out some friends who are in that group, people you talk to, teachers, anyone who like, you're grateful for, anything like that. That now is the time.
The people I'll call out. So Brunel Holland, I know he's currently on the board. He was in that group. George Purcell, Chris Mason, Dwayne Tyler, Langston Shaw. That's the 6 of us. As I said, we get on the phone every Thursday. We've been doing this for a year, which is crazy. We haven't been able to stick to anything for a week. So the fact that we got on the phone every other Thursday for a year, and we talk for at least 3 hours. Maybe it's like 1 o'clock and I'm just like, I gotta go to bed. But we talk for about 3 to 4 hours, just about everything. So that's been a solid connection that we just maintained to get us through the pandemic and just to stay up to date and help each other out.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm very much still in touch with all my classmates, my brothers at Landon. You talk about being a father. I had the very, very incredible, surreal experience of traveling with Noah Gear, Jacob Wright, Ian Napoleon, 3 of my classmates from Landon, to go to Robel's baby shower, as our classmate became a father. And I was brought to tears. It was so moving. I mean, we grew up together, and to see your peer make this step and to do so with such grace. Robel, if you're watching, you're a great dad to Maverick. I'm so proud of you, man. I've got so much love for you and your family. And anybody else out there in the Landon community watching, you should know that, we're all here for you. We know this is a really tough time. If you are struggling in any way, you should reach out to those in the Landon community, to your teachers, to your classmates. If you need advice, career advice, you should reach out. We're all here to help each other.
Yeah, for sure. And the last thing I'm going to do just to probably close is just to pay my respects to Miss Vanessa Burchett, who passed recently. Again, she was in 3rd grade. I did not have the fortune to have her as my teacher, but as a boy coming to Landon, as you said, some of the first memories, the experiences, I mean, I just think back to what she had to go through, what her experiences were like, being one of the few, and maybe at some point only, Black female teachers at Landon, and just the patience, the care, the strength that she exuded in her interactions with you. It almost transferred to you in that interaction, right? And so people like her, there are many other people, but I just want to mention her for this podcast.
Absolutely. We should dedicate this episode to her because she left an indelible mark on so many people I know. Everything you mentioned, the care, the love, the compassion, and what we know she endured as a Black woman at Landon in the time period in which she was at Landon. She is a hero to be cherished. She is somebody who will live on in all of our hearts and memories.